never thought of myself as a perfect husband, but I always believed I was a committed one. Lauren and I had spent 8 years together. Some good, some bad, but always as a team. Or at least that's what I thought. Lately, though, things had shifted. At first, it was subtle. She was quieter than usual, distracted. I'd ask her a question, and she'd take an extra second or two to register that I had even spoken. Her smiles felt smaller, her laughter less frequent. The little habits that made up our life together, morning coffee, inside jokes, the way she used to rest her head on my shoulder at night, had started to fade away one by one. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that life sometimes got in the way. Work stress, family troubles, the monotony of routine, these things weighed on a marriage. I just needed to be patient. That's what I told myself, over and over, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. It happened on a Tuesday evening. I remember because it was one of those perfectly normal days where nothing seemed off. I got home from work, set my bag down, and walked into the kitchen where Lauren was sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone. She looked comfortable, wrapped in one of my old college sweatshirts, her hair tied up in a messy bun. It was the kind of image that used to make me smile, make me feel like home existed within 4 walls and one person. "Hey!" I greeted, leaning against the counter. "How was your day?" She barely glanced up. "Fine." Short. Distant. I tried again. "Maybe we could have dinner together this Friday? Just us." She sighed, still looking at her phone. "I'm busy." I waited for a follow-up, some kind of explanation, but none came. "No, maybe next time. No, sorry, I have plans." Just those 2 words, spoken with complete indifference. I felt a weight settle in my chest. I forced a small laugh, trying to keep it light. "Busy with what?" "Just things," she replied, tapping at her screen, completely uninterested in continuing the conversation. I swallowed, ignoring the lump forming in my throat. "All right," I said, my voice even. "Maybe another time." She didn't respond. Something inside me cracked. It wasn't just the rejection, it was the way she said it. Like she owed me nothing. Like my presence, my effort, my love. None of it mattered. For years, I had been the one who kept things together. The one who planned date nights, who apologized first, who made sure we always found our way back to each other, no matter how hard things got. But standing there in that kitchen, watching the woman I had built my life with act like I was little more than background noise, I realized something I hadn't before. I was the only one trying. The signs had been there for months. The late nights on her laptop, claiming she was working. The weekends spent out with friends I barely knew. The lack of affection. The way she flinched when I reached for her hand. I had ignored it all, convinced myself it was temporary. But this moment, this effortless dismissal, made it clear. Lauren had already checked out. I studied her, waiting for some sign that she felt the tension in the air, that she noticed the way her words landed like a punch to the gut. Nothing. I could have confronted her. Could have asked why things felt different, why she had grown so cold. But deep down, I already knew the answer. She didn't care. Not anymore. And if she didn't care, then why the hell should I? For 8 years, I had put her first. I had changed plans, bent over backward, done everything I could to keep our marriage strong. But what had that gotten me? A wife who couldn't even look up from her phone long enough to tell me the truth. I nodded to myself, pushing off the counter. "Got it," I muttered. I turned and walked out of the kitchen without another word. I didn't know if she even noticed. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying our conversation over and over in my mind. Had I missed something? Was there a moment, a single point in time where things had shifted? Or had it been a slow decline, slipping through my fingers so gradually that I hadn't realized I was losing her until she was already gone? I turned my head slightly, looking at her. She was facing away from me, curled up under the blankets, her breathing steady and calm, as if everything was normal, as if she hadn't just shattered something between us with a few careless words. I exhaled slowly, my jaw tightening. Fine. If this was the game she wanted to play, I could play it too. No more reaching out. No more trying. If Lauren wanted space, she could have all the space in the world. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't fight for something that only one of us was willing to hold on to. For the first time in 8 years, I decided to stop caring. And I wondered how long it would take for her to notice. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. I didn't feel rested. My body had been still all night, but my mind had been moving, restless and loud, playing back the same thoughts over and over. I turned over, expecting to see Lauren still asleep, but her side of the bed was empty. The sheets were smooth, untouched. She hadn't slept there at all. I sat up, rubbing my face. It wasn't the first time she had fallen asleep on the couch, claiming she had dozed off watching TV, but something about it hit differently this time. Maybe because I knew now, or maybe because deep down I had known for a while. I forced myself to go about my morning as if nothing had changed. Shower, coffee, a quick check of my work emails. I moved through the motions like a machine, avoiding looking toward the living room. I didn't want to see her still curled up under a blanket, pretending that nothing was wrong. By the time I finally did walk in, she was awake, sitting cross-legged on the couch, her laptop balanced on her knees. She looked up when she saw me, her face neutral, unreadable. "Morning," she said, like nothing was off, like she hadn't left me in silence last night. I hesitated for half a second before responding. "Morning." She didn't say anything else. Neither did I. I grabbed my keys from the table, checking my phone. No texts, no missed calls. I hadn't expected any, but some stupid part of me still looked. I should have been used to the quiet by now, but this time it felt heavier. Lauren didn't ask where I was going. She didn't even glance up from her screen. I walked out the door without another word. It was a slow day at work. My mind wasn't in it, and I was sure people noticed, but no one said anything. I buried myself in emails, mindless tasks that didn't require much thought. It was better than sitting in my office and thinking about what waited for me at home. At lunch, I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through old pictures without really meaning to. There we were, laughing at a summer barbecue, wrapped up in blankets on a road trip, standing close together at some wedding we barely remembered. I stared at the images, at the couple we used to be, and tried to figure out when we had stopped looking at each other like that. The screen dimmed, and I locked my phone, shoving it back into my pocket. It didn't matter anymore. By the time I got home, the house was empty. A note sat on the kitchen counter, her handwriting neat and casual. "Went to dinner with friends. Don't wait up." I exhaled slowly, reading it twice. Nothing unusual. She went out a lot these days. I should have been used to it. But this time, I just stood there, staring at those few words on a torn-out notebook page, feeling something tighten in my chest. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, took a long sip, and sat down at the table. The house was too quiet. I used to like the silence, the stillness after a long day. But now it just felt empty. I had a choice. I could sit here, scrolling through my phone, pretending I wasn't thinking about where she was and who she was with. Or I could take back some of that space for myself. I grabbed my jacket and my keys. The bar wasn't far, just a short drive across town, the kind of place where the lighting was low and the music wasn't too loud. I hadn't been there in months, maybe longer. Not because I wasn't allowed, not because Lauren ever told me I couldn't, but because I had always chosen to be home. Maybe that was my mistake. I found a seat at the bar, nodding at the bartender out of habit. He recognized me even after all this time. "Been a while," he said, setting a napkin down in front of me. "Yeah," I admitted. "Just felt like a drink." He didn't ask any more questions. Just poured me a whiskey and moved on to the next customer. The hum of conversation filled the air, people laughing, talking, unwinding from their own lives. I watched them without really seeing, my mind still back in that empty kitchen, that lonely note on the counter. "Didn't expect to see you here." I turned at the sound of the voice, and there she was, Anna, an old friend, and almost something from another lifetime. She slid onto the stool next to me, her expression half amused, half curious. "What's the occasion?" I shrugged. "No occasion. Just needed a drink." She studied me for a second before ordering one for herself. "How's Lauren?" The question landed like a punch to the ribs. I could have lied, could have forced a smile, told her everything was fine. Instead, I just took a slow sip of my drink. Anna was sharp. She always had been. It didn't take her long to read between the lines. "That bad?" she asked, her voice quieter now. I stared at the glass in front of me, tracing the rim with my thumb. "That obvious?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "I always thought you put in more effort than she did." I exhaled a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah." Anna tilted her head slightly, watching me. "You look tired, Eric." I glanced at her. "I am." The conversation should have stopped there. But it didn't. Because for the first time in a long time, I was sitting across from someone who actually looked at me, who actually saw me, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to walk away from that. I got home late that night. The house was dark except for the small glow of the kitchen light Lauren always left on. For a second, I just stood there, staring at the quiet, empty space. It should have felt familiar, but it didn't. It felt foreign, like a place I had walked into by mistake. I kicked off my shoes and moved toward the fridge, grabbing a bottle of water. That's when I noticed her bag on the counter, her coat draped over the back of a chair. She was home. Lauren was awake, sitting on the couch with her legs pulled up, scrolling through her phone. She barely glanced at me when I walked in. "Hey," she said, her voice flat. "Hey," I replied. She didn't ask where I'd been. She didn't ask anything. I watched her for a moment, waiting to see if she'd look up. She didn't. I should have let it go. I should have just gone upstairs and shut the door like she had done so many nights before. But I couldn't. "Did you have fun?" I asked, leaning against the counter. She blinked as if surprised I was still standing there. "What?" "Dinner. With your friends." "Oh," she shrugged. "Yeah, it was fine." That was it. No details, no stories, no attempt to include me in the life she was living outside of this house. I nodded slowly, letting the silence stretch between us. Then, before I could stop myself, I said, "I ran into Anna tonight." That got her attention. Her fingers froze on her phone screen. It was quick, just a flicker of something in her expression. But I saw it. "Anna?" she repeated, carefully neutral. "Yeah, at the bar." She set her phone down, finally looking at me. "What were you doing at a bar?" I smirked, but there was no humor in it. "What? I'm not allowed to go out?" She frowned. "That's not what I meant. Isn't it?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. I pushed off the counter, crossing the room until I was standing in front of her. "You know what's funny? You didn't even ask where I was. Didn't ask why I came home late. But the second I mention Anna, suddenly you care." "That's not fair," she snapped. I tilted my head. "No? Explain it to me, then. Because I've been watching you pull away for months. I've been waiting for you to notice that I stopped trying. And you didn't. You didn't care. But now, the idea of me with someone else." I gave a short, bitter laugh. "That gets a reaction." She stood up, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "You don't get to turn this around on me, Eric." "Turn what around? What even is this?" I gestured between us. "Because it sure as hell isn't a marriage anymore." Her lips parted like she was going to say something, but no words came out. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something other than indifference in her eyes. Fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing control. I laughed, shaking my head. "You never thought I'd actually stop, did you?" "Stop what?" she whispered. "Chasing you." Her breath hitched and I saw it, the realization sinking in. She had been the one drifting away, the one pushing me aside, but she had always assumed I'd be there, waiting. Always waiting. Not anymore. I stepped back, running a hand through my hair. You know, for a long time I blamed myself. Thought maybe I wasn't doing enough, wasn't being enough. But tonight, I realized something. I met her eyes, my voice steady. I was never the problem. "Eric." "I'm done, Lauren." Her face paled. "What does that mean?" I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in months. "It means I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not begging for scraps of your attention. I'm not being the only one who gives a damn about this marriage. If you want out, fine. You already checked out months ago. I'm just making it official. For the first time in a long time, she looked afraid. Wait, she said quickly, reaching for me. Can we just talk about this? I pulled back before she could touch me. What's there to talk about? I didn't mean for things to get like this. But they did, I said simply. And you didn't care. Until now. She stared at me, her eyes wide and desperate. Eric, I don't want to lose you. I gave her a sad smile. You already did. I turned, heading toward the stairs, but she called after me. Where are you going? I didn't stop walking. To bed. Eric, please. I ignored her, closing the door behind me. I expected to feel something. Anger, relief, maybe even regret. But all I felt was exhausted. I lay down, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow I'd figure out the details. Maybe I'd stay with a friend for a few days. Maybe I'd start looking for a new place. Maybe I'd call a lawyer. But tonight I was done.